Supergirl was developed by Greg Berlanti, Ali Adler, and Andrew Kreisberg. Now, Berlanti and Kreisberg, you'd probably recognize those names as being the co-developers and executive producers of Arrow, Flash, and now DC's Legends of Tomorrow, so DC Comics-based television is nothing new for them. And now they have Supergirl, the first DC Comics-based television show that they have produced outside of the CW network. For a short time, at least. This series is based on the character of Kara Zor-El, Superman's cousin, also known as Supergirl. And in this series, Kara Zor-El is a Kryptonian sent from Krypton to Earth when she was like 13 years old because parents wanted her to survive as well, and she was sent to Earth to protect her baby cousin Kal-El when they arrived on Earth together. Trouble is, it did not work out that way. Kara's ship got caught up in this mysterious dimension called the Phantom Zone and was trapped there for, 20-something years until she was finally released. And when she was finally released, she landed on Earth, got exposed to the sun's rays, our yellow sun, which means now she has superpowers, but most of all, she found out that Kal-El did not need her help and was able to grow up to be an extraordinary person on his own, known as Superman. Superman helped Kara find a family, get adopted. Interestingly enough, her adoptive mother and father are played by Dean Cain from Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, as well as Helen Slater, who played Supergirl in the god-awful Supergirl movie from 1984. Kara also had an adoptive sister, an older sister by the name of Alex Danvers. So there's a nice little big sister, little sister type of relationship that goes on in this show, which appeals to me because I have a little sister of my own. Over 10 years later, Kara grows up to be a young grown woman working as a personal assistant to media mogul Cat Grant, played by Calista Flockhart. Her job kind of sucks in that she has to go out and get coffee, arrange schedules for Cat's chaotic workaholic lifestyle. But then one day, one fateful night, a plane comes crashing down into National City, and Kara, who has hid her powers her entire life, decided she could not hide it anymore. She had to save that plane, embrace her heroic destiny. So, flies up, saves the plane, and decides from there on out to become Supergirl, and the adventures begin from here on out. Her friends include Winn, played by Jeremy Jordan, a tech expert who involves computer stuff, internet stuff. He's pretty much Cisco, but for Supergirl, if we're going to be making Arrowverse comparisons. Kara also befriends a new employee at Catco, a tall, handsome guy by the name of James Olsen. Yes, that is supposed to be Jimmy Olsen, Superman's photographer and former sidekick. Yes, I'm aware that Jimmy is drawn as a young white ginger kid, so, him being played by an African American is different, but get over it. He's also grown up. This is a grown-up version of Jimmy. He's not that kid that takes photos wherever Superman goes. He's more seasoned, and he's wiser, he's older. Not too much older than Kara, but enough wisdom on him to be sort of a confidant to Kara. I mean, he knows at this point about Clark Kent as Superman. He knows that Kara is his cousin. Kara also rooms with her sister. And the interesting thing about her sister, Alex, is that she's secretly working for a government organization called the DEO, which, I kid you not, stands for Department of Extra Normal Operations, and is run by a very stern leader by the name of Hank Henshaw, played by David Harewood. Now, despite his stern appeal and his initial distrust of Supergirl's capabilities to help the DEO out, he has a pretty deep secret. A secret so deep that it'll change how you think of his character, and it also enhances the show. It helps expand the universe of the show. The villains that Supergirl fights are escaped prisoners from a place called Fort Ross that was a Kryptonian alien prison that was in the Phantom Zone, that came out of the Phantom Zone when Supergirl came out of the Phantom Zone around, 10 something years ago. So there's aliens that pop up around Earth. But the real big villain plot of this series, at least this season really, is Supergirl's aunt. her evil Aunt Astra. Her aunt is leading a group of renegade Kryptonians who vow to take over this planet, something they tried to do with Krypton, but failed. So, slightly similar to General Zod's plot. However, the motivation behind the plot is kind of interesting, so it has that going for it despite the cliche. I like this show. I really like this show. I didn't like it as much as I like it now. At first, it's kind of like the first season of Arrow. The first half of the first season of Arrow was kind of rocky. It was very much trying to figure itself out. Didn't quite know what direction it was going. Not until halfway through, I'd say around the 10th episode, is where this show really takes off. This series is showrun by Andrew Kreisberg and Ali Adler, and while no insult to Adler, I have a feeling she probably bared bigger part of the responsibility of showrunning at first, and then Kreisberg became more involved the second part of the season, just because I felt the pacing improved, and it reminded me a lot more of The Flash, and how well paced and well plotted that was in its first season. But I totally understand why a lot of people stopped watching this show early on. The pilot is a little iffy. It's not terrible. It's not the worst pilot. I would actually say the pilot for DC's Legends of Tomorrow is way worse than Supergirl. Supergirl is like the first successful superhero television show we've seen that's about an actual comic book based superheroine. And keep in mind, I said successful, so sorry, Birds of Prey. And if you include movies in that, yeah, because we've never really seen a successful superheroine movie. Maybe that'll change next year with Wonder Woman, although I'm a little iffy on the status of the DC Extended Universe right now, because we've never seen anything like this since Linda Carter and her Wonder Woman series, and that was back in the 70s. So the fact that this show exists is pretty extraordinary on its own. The issue is that Supergirl's a spin-off character. She's not a standalone character like Wonder Woman is. Concerns that the pilot episode had to address was the purpose of the show, why this show exists, and why use this character. Two mixed results. The first episode definitely amped up the elementary school level feminist themes of, yay, a girl can be a hero too. I mean, one waitress has a line that, now my daughter has someone to look up to. It's very cheesy in that respect. But me, having someone who has watched television a lot, knows better than to judge a television show by its pilot. I have a lot of friends that said, oh yeah, I watched the pilot and it was bad and I just couldn't watch it anymore. I know better than that, because I've watched television shows a lot that I've ended up coming to really, really like, but the pilot and maybe the first season were just pretty bad. I mean, people hail Buffy as like a really great television show, and it is, don't get me wrong, it's really wonderful. The first season, though, the first season's not that great. The only episodes you'd watch from the first season are like the first two and the last two. Maybe the episode where Angel reveals he's a vampire, but nothing else. The first season's just bad. Everything else of that, it got better. And that's the same thing with Supergirl. Also, I think a lot of people didn't know how to react to the show's lighthearted femininity. It does have a feminine feel, and I think people just aren't used to that, and that's why people, tuned out. It doesn't have a masculine, straight-to-basics feel at first, kind of like Arrow did, and a little bit of The Flash, and just like superhero movies that we've liked and we've seen for a while. And a lot of people just weren't quite used to that. Some people unfairly compared it to romantic comedies, but I guarantee you, if you stick with it, you'll really come to like it. And if those first few episodes are just hard for you, if they're too standalone for you, I get that. I would say maybe watch the pilot if you can, but skip to around episode 10. If it's hard for you, if you can't get into it, skip to episode 10, go from there. Hopefully you'll have the previously on Supergirl parts to help catch you up. Special effects in this show are pretty much as good as you could get on a broadcast television show that has to produce 22 episodes a year. Melissa Benoist really shines in the role as Supergirl. She isn't just some pretty face that they dropped in a costume and stuck in front of a camera. She really commits. She shows her range. She can be bubbly, happy, but she can also be serious when the situation demands it. And I think that's the kind of character that Supergirl is. Granted, my whole basis of Supergirl has been from the Bruce Timm animated shows. I've never read too many Supergirl comics, well, not really any, but my basis has been from Superman the animated series as well as Justice League. That's sort of my basis of Supergirl. And this one, for the most part, pretty much fits the description, if anything, a little more serious, too. A lot of people didn't know quite what to think of the lighthearted tone, I know. And I think that's just because we've been so used to seeing feminine characters having to be really hardcore and serious. We got that with Jessica Jones, and that works with Jessica Jones because that's the kind of character she is, and that is the world she is in, and that's the tone of the show. It's not forced, it's not ham-fisted. Agent Carter has the whole thing about women proving themselves in the workplace, but that's because that show takes place in the 1940s, so it works. And Supergirl is a lighthearted superhero in a city. She's not in Starling, she's not in Gotham, she's not anything like that. And when the series was good, it was great. And I would say good outweighs the bad in a decent first season. Thankfully, it found its footing during its season, I would say. Some shows don't, and they take a year to figure it out. I would definitely recommend Supergirl as a TV show that you should definitely watch. If you like superhero television, if you like lighthearted superhero television, if you like Superman, I would recommend this show. Now, okay, here's the thing. Superman does not appear a lot on this show. He barely appears, and you never see his face. He's usually shown from far away or from an obscure angle or in shadow, so it's probably like a CG construct. You never even hear him speak. And, of course, the reason for that is because Warner Brothers has this thing about you can't show Superman in a TV show because we're using him in the movies right now, of which, oh god, Superman, I feel so bad for you. And even that's a little hypocritical considering that they're going to do that whole thing with Flash. They're going to make a Flash movie with the exact same character, and it's not going to be related to the TV show. But the ultimate thing is, I think Supergirl understands Superman better than the Superman movies we're seeing right now. It understands Superman better than Man of Steel and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. Because if you think about it, Supergirl is really just the adventures of Superman, just not with Superman. I mean, it has its own Lex Luthor in the form of Maxwell Lord, it has its own General Zod, it has its own versions of types of characters that Superman has faced. And it's merely telling those adventures, which is just as well because we're not getting those kind of adventures in the movies. The movies are giving us this really not interesting character at all. A character that doesn't know why he wants to be a hero. I mean, in Batman v Superman, every time Superman is shown saving a person, unless it's Lois Lane, because, he has to save Lois Lane, but every time it's shown Superman saving people or doing something heroic, it's shown doing, slow motion with really sad music, like it's a burden on Superman. What the fuck? And keep in mind, that movie cost, $250 million, and an episode of Supergirl costs about $3 million to produce. And yet that show understands Superman, and therefore Supergirl, way better. And it's way more fun, too. See, Superman wants to be a hero and wants to save people, and he does it as a means of sort of giving back to the planet that helped raise him, because he's a refugee. Oh yeah, there's a lot of immigrant refugee allegories sprinkled around on this show. So I found that really interesting. But also just because it's the right thing to do, and Superman was raised by good people, as well as Supergirl, are raised by good people, and they understand the ideas of right and wrong, and doing the right thing, and doing good things to help other people. And that is just something these movies just don't understand at all. And the tone is wrong in those movies. The tone is dark and gritty for dark and gritty's sake. There's no justifiable reason for it. It's just because Zack Snyder likes doing dim colors and depressing, lofty dialogue. Where Supergirl is just like, fuck that, we're a fun superhero show because that's the kind of hero we are. I mean, if you want to do that with Jessica Jones, fine, because it makes sense for Jessica Jones or Daredevil or the Defenders characters. But Supergirl is not that. okay? And therefore, Superman should not be that. So if you aren't getting your fill of Superman from the Superman movies, drop on by to Supergirl. You're gonna see what you've been missing from those movies. That this TV show understands superheroes, lighthearted superheroes like Superman, a lot better at a much smaller cost and a much more rigorous production schedule. I'm excited to see Supergirl get better as it's coming back for a second season, although this time it's going to be on the CW, which a lot of people says it's the rightful home for the show. I say that's too bad for CBS's sake, just because CBS didn't want to pay the production cost for a second season because the series didn't get super high ratings as it went along. It was still, I think, its highest rated freshman show, but it didn't measure up to CBS's standards. But they still wanted to keep it on the air, and it had a following that was loyal enough, so they just moved it to the CW, which CBS owns 50% of. It's too bad for CBS because most of CBS's programming kind of caters to a way older audience, and this was the season where it seemed like they were trying to get a younger audience watching their shows, hence the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and hence Supergirl. But I guess that didn't work, so Supergirl is going to the CW, which will be great, which will be fine. You know, we'll have 4 DC shows on the CW, and the CW is practically turning into the DC network anyway, so okay, at least Supergirl stays on the air. I know that National City is going to look a lot different, considering that they're moving from Los Angeles to Vancouver to save money on production costs, so some of the scenes outside of National City are probably going to look a lot like Central City. Maybe they'll keep the exterior shots for when Supergirl's flying around, but maybe it won't be as big of a deal as I thought, and hopefully the actors will be willing to move there. I know the lead actress will, of course, but hopefully all of the actors will be willing to move to Vancouver, and we'll have the complete cast and everything. So that is my review of Supergirl Season 1. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.